Welcome back. We're in lesson 9. We're going to do some percent word problems today. And the only problems we have are the two that are on the screen. Now we remember that percent means by the hundred. So when we write these problems, we're going to put something over 100, and it's going to be the percent value. The question is always, what is the percent value that we use? So let's look at what this first problem, 9.1, says, and let's see if we can figure that out. So we had wood nymphs and maids. The wood nymphs and maids gambled and frolicked before the banquet began. Oh, such a lovely idea. If 70% of those present were wood nymphs. Okay, so now we start taking notes. 70% equals wood nymphs. I'm just going to do a little shorthand. And 120 maids were present. 120 is the number of maids we had. How many wood nymphs came to the banquet? Well, if 70% of the people present were wood nymphs, and you only had wood nymphs and maids, and 120 were maids, then that tells me that the 120 equals the other 30%, because 70 and 30 equals 100, and percent means out of 100, right? So 120 has to equal 30%. So we can write that as 30 over 100 equals 120 out of, we don't know how many. That's what the question is asking. How many wood nymphs came to the banquet? Well, in order to figure out how many wood nymphs came to the banquet, we have to figure out the total number. So let's do that. So now we can cross multiply. 30 times x is 30x. And then we just have 120 with 2 more zeros on it. That's 12,000. We divide both sides by 30, and that's going to equal 400. So 400, oh goodness, my pen jumped. 400 is x, so that goes here. The other thing we can do is we could just say, okay, now we know how many we had total. Let's subtract the maids, and that should leave us the total number of wood nymphs. So that is 70%, is 280. All right, that should be your answer. 280 wood nymphs. I don't know exactly what a wood nymph is, but it sounds, supernatural and all fantasy-like. So, second problem. 9.2. The harvest was cornucopian. Cornucopian means bountiful, as it was 120% greater than last year. That's important. Let's underline that. If the yield was 140,800 bushels, how many bushels were harvested last year? So if the harvest was 120% greater than last year, so that means than all of last year. So what that means is it's 120% more than last year's 100%. So that's saying 100% of last year plus 120% more. So that equals 220%. And we write that as 220 over 100. It's always whatever over 100, even if it's more than 100. Okay? If the yield for this year, that's this year, and that's obvious it's this year because it asks us how many came from last year. So it's telling us this year. So if last year, or if this year was 140,800, how many was last year? How many was the original 100% from last year? So let's see. We're just going to cross multiply. 220x equals, and I just put 2 more zeros on there for the 100. That's going to be 14,080,000. We divide that by 220 and that becomes 64,000 bushels. Man, that's a lot of bushels. All right, so last year they had 64,000 bushels. This year they had 140,800. So it was 2.2% or 120% over last year. And that's the answer. That's all we have for today. Or that's all we have for this lesson. I'll see you in lesson 10.